I'm joined today with my good friend, Mr. House. We are going to talk about some of the stuff that's going on, mainly a little bit of a surprise, some of the future of the country and the economic outlook based on what we heard at the RNC. Not something that we were expecting, but we'll get into it today on Money Never Sleeps. Welcome back to Money Never Sleeps. I'm joined with Mr. House, as I said earlier. Before we get into anything, nothing we say is financial advice. We are just a couple of guys that love talking about the markets. Before you make any financial decisions, do your own research or consult with your own financial advisor, especially when times get volatile. That is, you're just pretty much on your own, just like we are. But we're going to talk about how we're feeling in the markets. A lot of stuff I think that we could definitely discuss, considering this week's kind of a slow week in terms of data. We did get some important data yesterday. More so next week is going to be one that's going to be killer. That's GDP, PCE, and it's going to really tell us what the rate hike or the rate cut outlook is for the next few months here. But how's you haven't been here in a while? How are we doing? How are we recovering? And what's on your mind in the markets right now?
Yeah, recovery's going well, all things considered. Still stuck in bed. I hope any viewers live or recorded enjoy looking at my pillows for the next half hour or so. But no, feeling pretty well. Market's been turbulent, which has been fun to watch and participate in. So doing pretty well overall.
Yeah, it's the market. More so TradFi, I think, has been showing some major, cracks, and it's kind of in an area that I think has been extremely frothy for the past, since 2022, October 2022, right? That bottom out of the market once we got into 2023, January, we started seeing a lot of speculation amongst tech companies. I think they were just so undervalued that they allowed this rise to go up, part of the swing. However, there's just been no obstacles since the BTFP that have kind of put a damper on what could be, resistance in some of these stocks, and they become extremely speculative, right? We know the
Mhm.
concentration has been really hard, uh, really bad in terms of the S&P. The Nasdaq obviously has some big winners in there. They're removing companies that are losers, putting in winners. I think the one that they're doing soon is a Super Microcomputer, or it's TSMC. It's one of those two
Mm.
companies, and they're removing Walgreens. So there's a lot of things that are just like, okay, this is pretty much not allowing this market to come down. Now we're getting to a place where there's some narratives out there. There's some insider selling that's happening. And we know that with the heavy weight and concentration of the indexes with some of these companies that are starting to see, rotation of capital out of them into the smaller caps, we're in a place where there could be some volatility in the months to come, right? So a lot of things that are lining up. I think one of the things that we have to talk about today was pretty much what Trump had said at the RNC regarding Taiwan. Uh, if everyone, I mean, I think everyone knows here how important that Taiwan is, and that is pretty much because what's one of the largest companies in the world right now, and where do they manufacture most of their chips? It's Taiwan. It's Nvidia. So, if we get to a point where there is some turbulence where in terms of protection of Taiwan, necessarily it isn't there, maybe there's a chance where you start to see, maybe, I think this is highly unlikely, chips being made in the United States for Nvidia. I think that's going to be expensive for them as well, but it's just going to be problematic for, I think, the outlook of the company itself, right? No one likes war. It's not necessarily good for the econ. I mean, sometimes it's good for the economy, but it's not good for a company stock if they're manufacturing something where there's a lot of warfare and uncertainty. So I think a lot of people are taking a little bit of profit on Nvidia today. Um, I want to get your thoughts on the whole situation because you're probably a little bit more well versed in terms of the geopolitical risk that it could pose for some of those companies.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main takeaway, right, is the past, I mean, all of Biden's term, we've been pretty passive in our support for Taiwan, where it's kind of like there if needed, right? But there's been some brinkmanship elevated by the Chinese military, which we never really directly responded to. It was more so just appease them, hope nothing serious comes of it. Whereas, throughout Trump's pretty much his entire term in office, he was very on the stand of we're going to defend our allies. And I think, taking that into consideration with what's been going on with the Chinese economy, these rumored bank runs that are really hard to confirm because everything's being covered up, as well as, the past quarter or two, looking at some of the real estate collapses. I think it's a few different things. There's that chance of if war or conflict does break out, not great for the companies. But I think you can counter that with if Trump is elected and gets to serve his second term, it's probably a more promising outlook there. But I thought the one interesting thing, just looking at the RNC of what's happened overall, is you've got all of this economic bullish indicator or all economic bullishness indicated by what Trump's saying, whereas you have Biden saying we're going to reduce the amount of tax you pay on homes, and we're also going to build 2 million more homes. It's like, well, when has interfering in the open market ever served us well in the past? And also, who's going to build those 2 million homes for you?
Yeah, I mean, those are great questions to ask. I think what it really comes down to is what it should be to take the pressure off a lot of Americans because everything is coming back deflationary despite whatever the media is telling you. You got to cut rates soon. I mean, it's just as simple as that. If you want to take some pressure off, if you want people to be able to purchase homes, if you want people to actually make some money, it sucks right now because we know what's going to happen in the short term. But if we're looking at this long term, we just have to find a sustainable rate for these for the federal funds rate to the point where okay, we can allow a lot of this pressure off the middle class, and once we have debt going once again, there's people that are going to buy up those homes. There will be people who will build those homes. The RNC just really offered a lot of insight into what the future of not just the U.S. economy but the global markets could potentially look like under another Trump presidency. And there's some things that I have some hesitation with that definitely I think sound good for the time being. But we also have to take into account that there is probably going to be some type of correction in the markets. Just when it happens, who knows? I'm looking at later this year, but the big one I thought for me was Jamie Dimon potentially being part of the cabinet is Secretary of Treasury, right? And then just not firing Powell, pretty much allowing him to finish out his term. So it's a really weird situation there because that could be taken one of two ways. Jamie Dimon, I don't necessarily think that there's going to be any type of collapse under Jamie Dimon. I think, if anything, he's going to save the treasury market if they put him in charge. And also, people don't know this, but he would be allowed to sell off, like $1 billion worth of JPM stock if he does become, Secretary of the Treasury, and it would be untaxed. So that's one thing that's really interesting there. But the other thing, when it comes to not firing Powell, it's like, is he allowing Paul to ride this entire ship that he kind of steered on his own? And if that's it, it's like whatever happens, that's part of Paul's legacy too. So maybe I'm thinking about this in too much in terms of narrative, but it seems like there is definitely cause for some type of pull one way or the other, given what Trump is kind of like putting into place.
Yeah, I would say the one kind of good narrative indicator that I think Powell and Biden have going for them more recently was at the Economics Club of Washington. Powell seemed to think that inflation is starting to get under control and was taking a more dovish stance, but at the same time, we need to see action out of that, right? We need to see inflation start to lower and not just it be false words and empty promises, because realistically, that's a lot of what we've seen not just over the past 4 years, but past 8 years. And I think we're kind of at this point at the election where we're just like, really, are these the two guys we got to vote for again? Like, come on, give us something else.
Yeah, and again, I think a lot of it does come down to. I think right now the narrative is that Trump's likely to be the president again. I don't think there's many people who refute that. It just seems after everything that's happened in the past 2 weeks, there's more people that are probably in support of him as they were, 3, 4 months ago. Um,
Yeah, I will say to counter that and take kind of like a devil's advocate stance, right? As we know how fast the media moves, whether it's the mainstream media or just the open, Twitter social media side. So, between now and November, we've got a long time ahead of us, even though it may seem short. So, just imagine whatever else happens between now and the election. It could, it could drastically shift those narratives or just continue to raise the favor of Trump that we see right now.
definitely. Barring chaos, barring anything else that could definitely influence the outcome of an election, whether that's just a scandal or something like that. We have no idea.
Mhm.
We absolutely have no idea. But the last thing that I thought that was really interesting from the RNC, I'm not going to talk about how he's not telling Powell to cut rates until after the election. I think Powell's going to do whatever Powell's going to do, right? He's going to make his. I think that's something you and I both agree with. If he sees something fit to cut rates, he's going to cut rates. Usually, it's probably going to be out of panic. But if he thinks that there's more inflationary pressures, rates are going to remain elevated. But the thing that was really interesting to me was the potential cut of the corporate tax rate down to
Mhm.
15%. Now, that's a great thing for a lot of corporations, more so even smaller businesses, right? I think that's going to be really helpful, especially after we get into this position where things are going to be extremely we're going to be in a deflationary market when things do get to the point where rates are cut. You're going to start seeing rates probably get lowered to where businesses who have good credit can borrow once again. You're going to start seeing a lot of money start to flow into some of these companies. But the bad thing is it's probably going to flow just as much into some of these Apples, these Nvidias, these major companies that are going to have a lot more capital to buy back their stock. So there's a good chance that we could see this cause an inflationary spiral upwards, actually, in over the next 2 decades or so, to the point where a lot of these companies hold a lot of concentration, especially at the lower end of where we end up in this market. And say the next 5 years or so, when they start making profit, but they're only paying 15 as opposed to 22% in terms of tax, that we get to a point where very similar to where we are now. So it's just something that's like a thought problem that I've been, I looked at it and I was like, there's a good chance if rates stay low for a long enough period of time, or they don't stay at a sustainable rate where it kind of combats inflation, there's a good chance we could be here in a couple of decades. So just something interesting, I thought. But again, Trump is only going to be president for 4 years if he does become president at the most. So the next administration could easily knock that back down or
Mhm.
knock it back up. All right. That's out of the way. That was just a lot of stuff that I thought was really important from the RNC the past 2 days. Let's talk a little bit about crypto before we get into TradFi, and we'll wrap up with TradFi because crypto has been a little bit different than TradFi. I'm going to let you take this one away because you explained it extremely well about the dump in the market, now the pump in the market. I have some wave counts on here that maybe I'm dead wrong about, but we can take a look at them and see potentially if we are on the same page or not. I'm going to actually delete some of these. These don't make sense anymore.
Yeah, so kind of like we were talking about before the show, it was really interesting. We started seeing this dump Wednesday, really picked up Thursday and Friday, and I think we went as low as just under or just around 3,800, right? But then by yesterday night, we had gone back to the origin of that dump. And it really seems like, there's a lot of people on Twitter and on social media that are being kind of fallen very bearish. And these were the people that were the loudest bull voices, the past 6 months. But meanwhile, we keep getting a lot of narratives that are saying like, hey, that's now's not the time to get bearish. And it's not, the hype accounts on Twitter, right? It's like the guys from Van Eck, the guys from all the different funds that have been investing, and it's more of your traditional side of investor that's like, no, no, we have a good chance of getting this ETF. You have Hester Pierce saying they're always open for reconsideration for the potential ETH ETF to enable staking. And that was a lot of pushback on why an ETH ETF wouldn't matter, is having that much unstaked ETH versus you have that much ETH all staked, you're adding an additional return to the ETF, generating more potential inflows without people actually needing to buy the ETF itself. So I thought that was something really interesting, and that it's probably going to be the predominant narrative around ETH up until we get some ETFs is A, are the ETFs coming? And then B, when they do come, are the ETFs allowed to stake the ETH that they hold? So I thought that was interesting. And then obviously on the Bitcoin side, we had the German government dump. And it was actually kind of funny. I was seeing some reports that there's this very obscure German law um, that essentially says if an asset they hold is subject to volatility swings of 10% in either direction, they have to immediately liquidate the position. I didn't verify and go through the German, constitution or anything, seeing that that's an actual law. That was more so like, hey, this just seems like one of those crazy enough things that it could actually be true. But then, also in line with that, we had Mt. Gox also finally sending out the claims to Kraken. So we're going to have a lot of people redeeming those claims. And then just the last thing on that is I think one thing that people are forgetting is a lot of those claims have probably been sold off to funds or smart money. So it's not just going to be what most people are thinking when it's like, oh, a bunch of, people had a few Bitcoin back in 2012. Now they're getting it back, probably insta sell. It's like, well, you have to think about in the post FTX frenzy, a lot of creditors were selling their debts, and or yeah, a lot of debtors were selling their. I don't know if I had that right, but so just imagine that on the scale of now people have been waiting 12 years instead of 2, right? So I think it'll be very interesting to see what ultimately happens when all that Bitcoin's unlocked next week.
Absolutely. And it kind of lines up with how overbought Bitcoin currently is. Doesn't mean that it can't not be more overbought, right? I see two scenarios for Bitcoin as well moving up here. Uh, I'll even throw in a third one, an ultra bullish scenario, just because I think it's not the time right now to think that everything is going to come collapsing instantly. I do think that it's going to get to a point where there's just too much stress on the financial system where, an asset class like crypto or Bitcoin itself is going to be able to sustain some of that volatility. I think everyone's going to be a victim of that volatility and that liquidity crisis that could be on the way. But looking at this as a Bitcoin USD on Coinbase, I'll start with the ultra bullish scenario. Ultra bullish scenario is 75 to like 78K. I think that if this is a bull flag and we are finding support above the 15 to 200 for the time being, and for some reason, I don't know, Trump says something bullish for Bitcoin, you get the ETFs. Uh, there's just a ton of bullish sentiment out there, and say Tether for some reason prints $2 to $4 billion out of nowhere in the middle of the night, and next thing you know, the price is up, $8,000 in 2 hours. It's very possible that can happen. We've seen it before. If
Mm-hmm.
that's the case, obviously this becomes a more illiquid market when it comes to redemptions. But there's a good chance that we could test this historical trend line that we've tested in the past. Right, this is the Coinbase IPO April 21. This is the BTC futures ETF back in October of 2021. We've touched it once already here, which would have been Bitcoin ETF rally that we got once we got that 38K dump. And that's the rally up to, what was this, like 75K? It's possible that if this is just a bull flag, we do test that up there. Now, I'm not sold on that because I think that there are greater risks in the financial system. So I'm thinking it's one of these two situations, and I'm wondering if you agree with me or not. So this is a five-way move for sure that we got down to this 53.6 level that we got last week. Now we're looking at this move here. Let me pull these arrows away. To me, this looks like a five-way move, and we're gonna have one more push up. That's just, I'm eyeballing it. That's what I see. So that tells me that there's a good chance that this is an ABC. That's part of a greater move, right? We get 5 waves in the A wave, we get a three wave in the B wave, and then we get another 5 waves in the C wave. And that's possible. And I think it could take us to somewhere, maybe around this neckline here at 69.3. That's one bullish scenario there. The bearish scenario, obviously, is that this C wave that we have. I mean, this is a three-wave move right here, and we just have an overextended C wave. I don't like that
Mm-hmm.
necessarily because this A wave is super short. I'm open to it, and I would love it honestly because I want to see some volatility in Bitcoin itself because it seems like you're getting more volatility in TradFi as opposed to Bitcoin. In terms of the sell pressure, we got it last week, but we're not getting it this week. This week's been up only for the past few days. So this is a possibility. I don't necessarily buy this one as being the possibility. I'm just being, I think, a little bit too conservative here. I think we're in a ABC pattern that takes us a little bit higher to maybe that 68 to 69K. Barring that nothing bad happens, there's no sell-offs in the market itself. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you think we're probably going to be heading next? And worst case scenario, how long do you think we have left of this corrective pattern to the upside?
I think it's really interesting. I think we're almost at a point where we we've been so we've had so many inflows from the traditional finance market that I think we're kind of at the point where I don't know that an event in crypto, unless we have like a 3AC FTX-esque black swan, like that's solely within crypto, unless we have something that major, I don't think the problem's going to come from within crypto. I think if we're going to see a crash that low, it's going to come from the TradFi side, whether that's, ultimately ETF outflows just start coming for whatever reason, or there's some sort of financial crisis in which it just drives the market as a whole down. I think we've kind of gotten to a point where I would have expected this correction to start going down, but each dip is getting bought up and it's touching a higher high, or at least trying to reclaim one. And then whenever any sort of pattern invalidates, it's like, okay, it's going down. No, it's not. Right? It's like, honestly, at this point, I'm kinda, I wouldn't say I'm done trying to guess or have an opinion, right? But it almost seems like the smartest way, at least to trade around it right now, is really just to ride whatever direction it's going for a day at a time. Like, that's almost how the market's been going. If it starts off going down, days are ending down. If the days start going up, the days ending up, which is real weird to see, but it makes me a little bit nervous at the same time, as far as I don't want to be over trading right now, right? Like, I'm pretty comfy in a lot of
Exactly.
spot because we're at a point where I think it could be a boom or bust, right? Like, I think we could have some sort of incident just with everything coming up around election season, um, that sees, a major downfall. Like, case in point being, okay, Biden wins, Warren and the anti-crypto crowd get their way. Boom, that could be something that legislation comes out and instantly repeals. Versus Trump wins. He's said he's pro crypto. JD Vance, his VP candidate, very pro crypto, very pro Avalanche as well. Um, so I think that could be something that maybe it opens a lot of people's eyes. So I think honestly that pivotal point probably comes sometime in the fall, maybe not right at election, but closer to election season, when the market as a whole starts to get a more definitive, I think X candidate's going to win. I'm placing my bet now, right? Like, I think a lot of those moves are going to start getting priced in probably mid September, early October. And then, come November, it's anyone's best guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think that broke it down beyond perfectly because I completely agree. I don't think that we're going to see anything pressure wise in the financial system, and I don't believe that the problem is going to come from within crypto. I think it's going to be it's a universal problem of global liquidity and a shortage of collateral that people are going to be scrambling to get out of equity assets to get into the treasury market. That's something that we kind of talked about for quite some time now. Um, Looking at everything that's happened here, it's 100% how the market's been trading, right? It goes in these waves, and it's just back and forth. And when you got a good one, you ride it, and when you don't, you short it. And when you're looking at this right now, I'm thinking that's and this is just my opinion. The best trade right now, and for me, is no trade at all. You know, I'm okay with not buying or trading at 64K, right? I'm happy holding cash and then buying lower if that's possible. I think that the only way we get to some of those really crazy levels, and it scares a lot of people because, like you said, so much money's flowed into the crypto space with these ETFs, is if we get below 38K and the TradFi market is just, hemorrhaging nonstop.
Mhm.
I think that's
Yeah,
what pushes us there.
yeah, like, I've been scalping some trades here and there when I've been awake and been able to catch them. But no, for the most part, like, I've just been doing a pretty healthy DCA. I like where I'm at holdings wise. So, whether the market goes up or down, like, I'm not really planning to sell any of that on, a 5, 10, even 15, 20% move. I'm just kind of like, hey, I wanna hold these coins the next 5, 10 years, see what happens. Maybe DCA out if we get some sort of major pump. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much divided between majority majors. I've got some alt positions that I'm optimistic about, and then yeah, a little bit of cash sidelined.
Yeah, definitely. I can't reiterate this enough for I'll say for my personal sake too. I want so much cash right now. That's how I want to be positioned because I do think there are going to be wonderful opportunities. And maybe not in Bitcoin like we once said. Maybe it doesn't get to 10K, right? Maybe it only gets to like 22K worst case scenario, 25K right around where it pumped from before the ETFs. But alts still have so much room to go down, unfortunately. And
This might be getting off the rails a little bit, but did you see the Hermetica, like, HUSD on Bitcoin?
no, I didn't. Should I pull up the chart?
So no, so it's a stable coin on Bitcoin.
Oh,
Hermetica Labs, yep, they launched a stable coin on Bitcoin. I haven't read fully into it, but I bookmarked the article. I would imagine it's probably leveraging runes or something to do with that. But yeah, they have a fully backed stable coin on Bitcoin now, which I thought was like interesting. But at the same time, it's like if I'm holding my Bitcoin, I kind of just want to hold Bitcoin,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
But I guess if you're in Bitcoin and you're a maxi, it's probably like a good. I could see why you would want it, transfer some to USDC, either stake it. I think it might be on Stacks as well, which is one of the Bitcoin L2s.
Yeah, it's probably on that.
But it's
um,
on it's on like Bitcoin Core as well, I guess you would call it.
gotcha. Yeah, I wasn't too familiar with it. That's pretty interesting too. Again, stable coins. Uh, I just bad taste in my mouth when I think of stable coins. Looking at this right here, this is total three. This will be the last thing we talk about in crypto, and then we'll move over to the banking sector real quick before we wrap up because there's some bullshit going on there. Looking at this is very similar to Bitcoin's trajectory, in my opinion. Total three. It's these death crosses. Right when you're about to get them, you always rally out of them, right? So anytime you see that, unless something horrible is fucking happening to the space where it's just like, oh no, there's more bad news to come out, you're probably going to see a balanced trader speculate that this is a good place to buy. And, it was right at the level that we were talking about. I said that we were probably going to go somewhere around the 515 billion. We went as low as 511. So, I mean, found some support there. It's bouncing up here. It's had a great bounce. I mean, from that 511 billion
Hmm.
to where we went up to, it's about 26, 27% move to the upside. And so it's an amazing return, especially when things are not necessarily performing that well. They weren't performing that well from the beginning of June all the way till, for about a month or so, just absolutely bleeding out like crazy. Now the question is, do we put in this ABC wave and then do we put in another five waves down after that? I think that's very possible. I really want to see what goes on in this A wave or
Hmm.
this five wave here. Once we have confirmation of what this is in the B wave, then we can definitely move forward and say, okay, this is part of a larger structure to the downside. It's going to be important to discuss. Where it could be going. But I do think that with the next five wave move that we do have, and maybe that comes just charting this, I have this, ending somewhere around, middle of August. Maybe that's when we start getting this five wave move to the downside. And, that could put us somewhere around 391 billion. So from where we currently are to where we are down there, that's about a 38, almost 39% drop. Get us, bounce, then another five waves, and maybe that takes us to the bear market bottom. And that's just kind of what I'm charting out. It's a five wave move to the downside, gets us to about 184 billion or so in total market cap for alts, and maybe that's where I start to enter my positions. And again, I'm only using this as a metric for when I want to enter my positions. This is the A, this is the B. I'm waiting for that C, this five waves that we're putting to the downside. And once we get that, I'm probably going to be putting some bids within this let's say 242 billion to 182 billion dollars on some of my favorite alts, ones that I think will survive a financial crisis. But outside of that, I think there is still some time that we need to give the crypto and alt market to decide what this structure actually is, because you don't want to get caught out right here and then ends up fucking ripping, this much and you're short, because that's how you will get liquidated in a second. Um, but yeah, just waiting on confirmation, I think, is the key thing here for Bitcoin and alts.
So I've got something I want to throw by you because I've been hearing a few different kind of theses behind this, and it makes a little bit of sense, which is so we know at some point there will be a rotation of capital to alts. Um, So the kind of thesis and argument I've been hearing is that the alts of the next cycle could be less of the infra and governance tokens and more rotation to memes. And it was kind of interesting to me. The bigger points were you look at a lot of these infra and governance tokens and they've got these massive like 5, 10, 20 billion FTVs with a lot of unlocks to go, and it's like, okay, but what's the purpose in holding the token? What can you do with it? It's not a gas token. I don't really care about your L2 or L3's governance. Whereas I can see a dog with a hat, right? And I can laugh at that, right? Or like um one of the coins that I kick myself for never buying, but at the same time it's like I do some meme coining, I don't do a lot. So that was why I never bought it, but it was Mog. Like my brother will come home from the gym and he'll call me, or if we're, going to my parents' house, he'll be like, dude, just Mog the gym so hard. He beats me in a video game very rarely. Dude, you just got Mog. And I was like, that's a sign where I should have bought it. But the thing touched, I think, 1 billion FDV today, and it's literally just a cat wearing pit vipers pointing and laughing at people, right? But that resonates with a lot of people, whereas like the latest ZK enabled L2 that has 10,000 TPS, that doesn't resonate with your average everyday person. But Pepe the Frog, everyone's seen a Pepe the Frog meme in 100 different forms and functions, right? So I was like, at first when I read it, I was like, nah, this is dumb. And then I read it again and I was like, I can kind of see the logic in this, especially
Right.
when you think towards the retail investor. Like for some of us who have been around blockchain and crypto for a while, it's taken us years to fully understand some of the terminology and how the technology works, what matters. If I'm someone walking onto Robinhood and they now have a Uniswap integration and they can buy meme coins, the first thing that I look at might not be, other than, ETH and Bitcoin, it might not be Arbitrum, Optimism, Blast, Solana, etc. It could be Dog with Hat. It could be Pepe. It could be Mog. Like think of Doge in the last cycle. Ran up to, what was it, like 50 cents, 70 cents? And it's like, it was Dogecoin. Like my dad and brother, they didn't care about buying ETH or Bitcoin, right? That stuff's too expensive, 69K, 60K. But I can buy the Doge for 30 cents. It's like, what does it do? Oh, it's just a Doge. It makes more sense to people.
It does. You know, that type of logic is too. It shows why, even though I don't fuck around with memes one bit. I maybe will if I have some capital after I buy what I want,
It's very
especially.
left curve mindset. Very
Yeah,
left curve mindset. Or even,
absolutely.
I'm honestly, if you mid curve meme coins, you could probably do well than a lot of people think in the right curving them.
Absolutely. And I think I mean, it just simplifying this, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that retail, even if they get burned, will just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and they'll just keep going to them because it's like, well, I fucked up on that one. Let me just try and put a bet down here and see if I can make it back. It's very similar to almost like sports gambling, to the sense it's like, oh, I just got my ass kicked on one parlay. Let me try and double down over here on a different one. So it seems
But
like. Go
to
ahead.
that point too, I would just add in briefly, like it's almost more capital efficient to bet on memes than it is to bet on sports sometimes, because the volatility that can be induced in like a low cap 10K to 100K meme coin, you can win or lose that amount of money faster than it takes a sporting event to take place, right? Like
Yeah.
I had, think it, I don't know what meme coin it was. It was one of the early political meme coins that died the next day. But I turned like half a soul into 9 soul in the time it took me to walk downstairs, enjoy a glass of wine with some friends, and then walk back up to my computer. Right. So it's like that's less time than a baseball, basketball, or football game takes. That's, solid 30 minute little magic internet money print. Not obviously not advice to go do that. I was quite stunned that I didn't lose my entire half soul. But it just shows like that's kind of the retail feel. How quick can I get money? And or how quick can I lose it in most cases?
Yeah, and they just, even when they're hurt by it, they always come back. That's the problem. I mean, not the problem. That's just the mentality and the fact of the matter. So yeah, I mean, Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to be my top holdings when the market gets to a place where I think it's time to buy. But I'm not opposed to finding some memes in that time and just being like, you know what, take $1,000, put some money into each one, and then just see what happens. Right? You could
Hmm.
easily 10x that if the market cap just grows at a decent pace. I mean, that could be a day, it could be a few hours, like you even said. Before we wrap up today, you gotta do two things real quick. Ace, how we doing? Yes, Jacob looks a lot different. He'll be back next week. Maybe we'll have a
That's good.
House and J Web show because I'll probably be gone one of those days. But let's wrap it up with TradFi real quick, just to show what's going on, because this is a really bad day. And I realized we didn't even talk about the S&P. Let's go S&P scoreboard. S&P right now, it's had a really bad down day. It's down 1.26%. Created a little gap there. And I say this is a bad day, but then, obviously you look at what the fuck has happened since October of 2023, and it's like, well, I guess it's only your scale, your outlook in terms of what's happened since then is just there. It's too large to comprehend. So even a day like today, when it seems like it's a lot, it's not necessarily a lot in comparison to what we've seen. However, it's a
Hmm.
good start. I think it's a good start to show that there is money flowing out of the S&P, out of these top 7 stocks, out of the tech stocks, and it's moving into the small caps. And we talked about this, I think, with JWeb actually, that there's a historical trend line that shows that 41,500 in the Dow is a level of resistance that if it hits that, In every single blow off top that it's had before, it's retraced below it, and then it's finally found resistance on this trend line. I'd be guessing if I pull it up on the daily. I think it's on the monthly, but I'm not going to pull it up right now. But the level is 41,500, and we're 250 points away from that right now. Less than that, 300 points. Actually, more than that. I'm stupid. 300 points from that right now, and we could hit that tomorrow before pre-market, right? You could just open up 300 up. It's coming in the next few days to weeks, and I wouldn't be surprised when it comes here. But that shows you that where it's coming from. It's the Nasdaq. It's the S&P. It's these. You're starting to see a lot of this money flow out of these, go into the utilities, into the small caps, which we did see these small cap rallies back in 2008, right before the collapse of Lehman Brothers. You just got like a 2-4 week little area where small caps just rallied like crazy. Why? It's
Mhm.
because everything is bearish right now for the small caps. But guess what? That's a squeeze. These are squeezes 100%, and there's definitely money to be made here because you're flowing out of one to the next where people are not seeing value. There was no value in the Russell, and look how much it shot up in the past few days. I actually got to remove this. But you broke in out of this bear flag, and I think a lot of people are going to get caught off guard. I think this is a trap 100%. I think it's going to go back into this channel, and it'll break from here. And my targets for the Russell is a part of this massive ABC structure. A, B, C. It's actually lower. It probably puts us, around 1,000 to sub 1,000 or so. If we don't get a major financial crisis and everything's averted, then probably like 14.5 or something like that is possible because
Mhm.
you're still putting in a lower one. But I'm a guy that likes to put his balls to the wall and say, we're going to have a major dump, and I'm cool with saying that we're going to go at 1,000 for the Russell. So I'll just stick with that. But across the board, that's what we're really seeing, and I mean, we can kind of see it in Nvidia right now too. So Nvidia was trading technically last week, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put a little short on Nvidia. Kind of worked. I'm happy right now. Who the fuck thought I would fight Nvidia? I thought I was an idiot going up against Nancy Pelosi's calls and her $10,000 buy. But Donald Trump surviving and looks like he's the front runner for the time being. And then he says that stuff about Taiwan, kind of change. That's a game changer. If they're going to write game change too, that's the scenario you want to talk about. But yeah, this is tech trading technically 100%. 5 waves down, 3 waves up. Right now, I said that we were going to hit our third wave, and then we're going to get a bit of a bounce. We're below this is a 4 hourly. Fuck me. Let's go to the daily. We touched off the 50 moving average. This is what I wanted to see. You get a little bit of a bounce, but I do think the fifth wave might be an extended fifth wave. So, I was looking at 106, which is still a fair level to say that's where we're going to go to. If it breaks below 106, we can close this gap to, say 96.18 or something like that. And that could
Mhm.
happen in a single trading day. It might be one candle that just comes straight down all the way. Uh, I think the level that I really want to see get tested is around 84 to maybe like 75. That'd be in a good position I would like to be in. But just looking at this from where we started today and where we broke out of this bull flag, and again that fake out that 100% was a fake out, uh, you went lower than the origin of this, which tells you that you are in a bit of a downtrend right now. So you just kind of have to keep that in mind. I'm not saying it's going to go down instantly, but there was a lot of weight in this. We saw Jensen Huang offloading like crazy, and now we're seeing a lot of the money flow out into the small caps. And I don't necessarily know how long this lasts, right? Eventually, I think everything's going to flow out of all the equities, and we're going to go into the treasury market. Everything's going to start getting bid up. I think the longer end of the treasury market's going to start moving to the upside. I think we're uninverting too at this point.
Mm.
People betting that the rate cuts are going to come in September, already above this wedge. If this bounces off here at like negative 0.31 and starts moving to the upside, we're going to uninvert the yield curve fairly soon. So what does that mean? That means probably a lot more people flowing into treasuries, a lot of people flowing out of equities. It's a very fun time right now. I'm so happy that the TradFi market isn't just up only. There's things, people moving money. This is what we wanted to see. It was not like this for a year and a half, but I do think that with the election, you're starting to see some of that volatility. Oh, fuck. All right, last thing. Too long of an episode today, but we're not having an episode later in the week, so this will make up for it. What the hell happened to Charles Schwab the past 2 days? Major gap, down yesterday 10.8%, 18%. Today, at one point, it was down almost 7.5%. It's only down just about 6% for the time being. This thing was trading last week at about 76. It went as low as 60, $61 today. Um, but again, trading in this channel. Bank of America had kind of a bullshit earnings call. They said that they haven't had a losing day on their trading desk in the entire quarter. I don't necessarily know if I believe that. I do think that there's a
Yeah.
huge issue when it comes to how much they have to pay with the rates being so elevated, and also how much people are off, taking their money out because they're either spending their money to stay alive or they just don't trust the banks for the time being. But these regional banks, it might not be the big banks that are showing problems, but the regional banks will drag down everything else with it. And that's going to be really telling. Charles Schwab was one that we talked about for over a year now. We've said that their FHLB loan, their exposure to it, bless you,
Thank you.
was otherworldly, and it was a 1 year deal. That was from the time of the Bank Term Funding Program's creation, right around then. So that came due, and now we have to question: are they in a lot more trouble than it seems? Haven't heard anything from them, but seeing something go down 17, 18% in a matter of 2 days, and it's a banking institution, not a great sign. So we'll leave it at that. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or are we good to wrap up today?
No, I think we're good to wrap. It was a fun show.
Yeah, mega show. I'm glad I had you on here. I was trying to do it the other day, and I was just half asleep. I got home from work at like 12 in the afternoon, and I was like, "Fuck, I got to do a show." Trump got shot. That's literally what I was trying to do. I'm like, "How is this going to impact the markets?" Glad nothing bad came out of that. I am. We hate war, we hate violence, all that stuff.
Mm,
But the market itself, definitely reacting to all that news. And I think we got a lot more in the next few months. So thank you guys for being here. We'll see you next week. We're going to take off Friday this week just because of everyone's schedule. But be safe out there. And, we'll see you later. Take care.
peace.